Just as a little bit of housekeeping, if we may, I'm sure that many of you will have questions, and in order to manage that effectively, can we ask that all questions are posted through the chat function? If you'd make those directed to Jocelyn, and what she would do is collate them together, and we'll present those questions back to Nick at the end of the call, if that's okay. So thank you for that. If I can just ask you all to put your microphones on silent if you haven't already, and then what we'll do is get the meeting started, and to introduce you to Nick Oryino. And Nick is the chairman of the Catering Engineer Standards and Regulations Board, CESRB as it's affectionately known, and the board has been responsible for putting this work together under Nick's chairmanship on behalf of the breadth of the industry. So if I may hand over to you, please, Nick. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I thought we'd start, as you see on the agenda, with a little bit about CESRB. If you could move on to the next slide for me, Jocelyn. And the next one. Okay, so I thought I'd just give you a little potted history of CESRB. As Keith says, it's the Catering Engineers Standards and Registration Board, and it was actually formed in April 1996, so it's almost 25 years ago. Initially, the board was comprised of representatives from CESA, CEDA, Corgi, and an organisation called ACE, who I don't believe are in existence anymore. It was chaired by Brian Whittaker, the retired former, as it was, CESA technical consultant. In June 1996, a technical steering group was formed with Derek Holtham and Phil Daniels and Eric Holland from Corgi and myself comprising the group. The initial task was to give industry consideration to the proposed changes from the then ACOP Gas Engineer Certification Scheme to the now ACS Certification Scheme. The board had considerable success in convincing Corgi that it was not necessary to have individual assessments on every gas appliance in a commercial kitchen. Group assessments were agreed, and this significantly reduced assessment times and costs. In actual fact, originally, the proposed assessment time on ACS was going to be 5 days. That was whittled down to 2/3 days, 2 days for the assessment and 1 day for perhaps training. So we felt we got some success, well, considerable success on that. Another early success was convincing the then drafting panel of BS 6173 to modify it so that the failure to have extraction interlocking in certain existing installations, i.e. Type A appliances only, should be deemed not to current standard and not immediately dangerous. This concession saved huge immediate costs to the catering industry. Over the years, the board has worked with industry to provide advice and recommendations on matters concerning gas, electric, ventilation, water, fog, in commercial installation and maintenance. Other notable successes have been in succeeding in working with RAS and limited engineer water certification schemes, also working on the development of the engineer electrical competency scheme. The board meets 3 times a year, or more if a particular subject matter is required. Currently, there are representatives from FEA, CEDA, RAS, GasSafe, and EU Skills. HSE originally attended the meetings, but with the cuts, they decided to decline meeting invites since. It is our intention to try and get them, and also now the ECA, participation in future meetings. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a background of what CESRB is all about. Could you move on to the next one, Jocelyn? Okay, so an overview. FEA was contacted by a member organisation, or by several member organisations, and made aware of the tragic accident of an engineer who suffered a fatal electric shock. It is understood that following the inquest, the coroner report stated that had an RCD been fitted, it is likely that any shock sustained by the engineer would not have been fatal. whilst other factors associated to the wiring, design and historic servicing may also have had a contribution factor or effect. In acknowledging the ongoing HSE investigation and the ECA position to then hold over discussions regarding the modification of BS 6771, CESRB seeks to highlight the safety issue to the wider catering equipment industry and issue electrical safety guidance that are considered as best practice safeguards to help and highlight practical issues with the installation, service and maintenance of appliances. CESRB endorses the incorporation of an RCD or an RCBO in order to reduce dangers to attending engineers and appliance users that may arise with the risk of receiving electric shocks. Can you move on, Jocelyn? So this was the proposal. Obviously, first one, I'll just move my screen out of the way slightly. Design and specification, as it says, all new installations should be specified with each individual appliance protected by a suitable RCD or RCBO. These should be specific to the particular appliance and not a general single RCD, RCBO on the distribution board, which is quite often, certainly on domestic, quite often you have one RCD and various circuit breakers for the going out to circuits on a domestic basis, on lighting circuits, socket circuits, etc., etc. But we see the RCD would have to be specific to the appliance because it would need to be rated as suitable for the type of appliance it's on. So on general installations, manufacturers should install installation instructions state the requirement for appliance to be protected by a suitable RCD or RCBO. I think I'm getting the impression that this is happening far more now, and far more manufacturers are actually stating that on their installation requirements. In all cases, even if the appliance manufacturer's installation instructions do not state a requirement for an RC or RCBO protection, the appliance should not be commissioned unless it can be verified that an RCD or an RCBO protection is in place. Can you move on from that, Jocelyn? With regard to service and maintenance, we recommend that checks should be made when servicing or maintaining individual appliances to ensure they have suitable protection. It's found that the appliance does not have suitable protection, or it cannot be verified that it does. This should be noted on the job report and reported to the responsible person on site. The reason I say cannot be verified is because quite often distribution boards aren't within the kitchen area, and it may well be that the engineer can't gain access to that distribution board to verify the type of protection that it's afforded to the appliance he's working on. Okay. Go on again. This has already happened on the Catering Engineer Electrical Competency course. With the help of Martin Dagnall, course criteria will be updated to incorporate the above guidelines. With regard to BIM, perhaps you can just confirm, Keith, what's happening on that?
Yes, thanks, Nick. As many of you may know, we co-chair the group that's looking to develop the International Food Service Equipment standards for the parameters relating to BIM. And what we're suggesting is that there should be a parameter that accompanies electronic equipment that states the requirement for an RCD or RCBO to be fitted. So that comment form has gone to the group, and we're awaiting its consideration by its committee for that to be included. So thanks, Nick.
Okay. With regard to BISA SFG 20 equipment maintenance schedules, I don't know how many of you know about those, but they are in existence. FEA had a major hand in writing those with BISA, and we will have a meeting early in the new year. But I've already made a request for the inclusion of a requirement for those protection for each appliance on the maintenance schedules, and those schedules pretty much cover virtually every piece of commercial catering equipment in a commercial kitchen. So it's very comprehensive. Do you want to just confirm the design software?
Yes, thanks, Nick. And similar criteria apply for AQ and Specify, where we're seeking that it's an automatic addition to the specification schedule for equipment that RCD and RCBO is an accessory to the appliance to ensure it gets fitted. So what we're looking for is the opportunity to fill any potential gaps and to proactively suggest the requirement through not only the quotation process, but also through the design. And obviously, as Nick's already intimated, through the installation, through to the installation of the equipment and its subsequent servicing. So we're looking at the package of services, all of which support the 3 points that Nick has made in the preceding presentation.
Thanks, Keith. Move on, please, Jocelyn. Racing through these. So really, that's what it's all about. We wanted to keep it fairly short and sweet to allow as much time as anybody has for potential questions and answers. So really, it's over there now to you, Jocelyn, to manage those.
Thank you, Nick. The first question, I have the first question in. The first question is, why not look to change EN 60335-2.x to mandate equipment of products of class 0, 0, 1, or 1 has an RCBO fitted to the equipment rather than look to change the fixed wiring as appropriate?
Well, that would mean the RCBO or RCD, I assume, would be actually on the actual specifically built into the appliance. Is that correct?
It's not mentioned in the question, Nick. I don't know.
No, I'm assuming that's what that means. And yes, I guess that's certainly something we could look at. I don't know that it would be possible on all appliances, but it basically would be, from what I understand of that question, it would be putting the protection device on the appliance itself and not on the incoming supply to the appliance. So it's certainly something that could be looked at, yes.
So the person responded that the answer is yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah. Yes, currently manufacturers, some manufacturers do actually do that, do incorporate RCDs in their appliances, but I think the majority don't. Yes, I think that's an ideal end product and product situation, I agree.
Great. So the second question is, does this apply to a 13A plug in appliances or others with a higher rating, 32A, for example?
Yes. Yes, but from my understanding as well, 13 amp socket outlets in commercial kitchens are protected by RCDs. We're talking about fixed wired appliances. And obviously, I would assume if they have a 13 amp socket outlet, and I can think of probably who pressed this question. But yes, that I assume then the RCD would be either on the appliance or very clearly specified on the instructions that the appliance had to be protected by that.
Okay, thank you. Another question, would it be possible to have clarity on the supplementary bonding in commercial kitchens and incorporate into the regulations?
Yes, it would. I guess it's not, I mean, that's something that is really to do with the 18th edition, isn't it? It's not something that was normally carried out by the installing engineers of equipment. And it would be knowledge of that. I'm not specifically sure if that covers or gives an answer to that question.
Perhaps that person could type in again to me if they need further clarification on that question. So the next question is, do we know how the incident occurred, the type of supply, was it over 32 amp, and did the engineer follow safe isolation procedures?
I don't think I can comment on that, to be honest with you at the moment, because the incident is still an ongoing investigation with the HSE, so I think it would be wrong to make any specific comments regarding the incident at this stage.
Okay, thanks, Nick. The next question is actually in two parts. One is RCD was one issue. There are also issues with earth bonding and specification of isolation. And then the second question is, key issue is acceptance by customers who need to refer to a credible authority rather than individual providers. How can CESRB help?
Well, CESRB are helping at the moment by giving what we think is best guidance. as you know, even the British Standard isn't a statutory document, and somebody can choose to ignore it. I think you ignore statutory document, British standards at your peril, and if you end up in a court, sadly, with a guy in a wig, and you can't be shown to be actually adhering to best practice and best guidance. But certainly at the moment, as two trade associations, CEDA and FEA, all we're doing, I say all we're doing, what we're trying to do is give what we believe is best guidance. If people choose not to follow it, well, that's really down to them. And if people choose not to follow 6173, the previous, which one is it? Yes, 7671, you know, it's down to them.
Thanks, Nick. Next question is, how do we deal with equipment with high earth leakage due to electrical noise filtration? High frequency load switching causes noise, which needs to be dealt with.
I think that's specifically, are you talking about with regard to RCDs? Because there are, and I can provide, and I will at the end, provide guidance to various documentation which is out on selecting RCDs for specific appliances, because as I mentioned earlier, we're very much aware that an RCD for a dishwasher wouldn't be the same type as an RCD perhaps for a solid top range or an induction hob. So that, you know, where there's water, moisture or induction modes for EMF, then they would be different. But I can give, there are documents, these are documents, actually I can cover those now and tell you those. Actually the ECA provide, well, there's electrical hazards and protection persons, and it basically, Legrand produced a document that gives various details on basically working on RCDs and suitable RCDs for the appliances and exactly how they work. Another document, I guess we can send these out, can't we, Keith? With
yes, certainly, Nick. We'll collate any of the documents referred to together, and we'll put them out together with a recording of this meeting.
Sure. And there's a BEMA publication which is titled the RCD Handbook, and it's BEMA Guide to the Selection and Application of Residual Current Devices, which is it's about a 20-page document, but it's good reading. Hmm. I think there's one more, I remember. I can find it.
There's several, actually.
Yeah, well, there's three that I've got. There's actually an ECA document, which is an ECA technical bulletin on RCD types to BS 7671 2018, and that talks about the various Type A and Type S RCDs. All of these publications are available, and we can give you links to them with the notes that come out from the meeting.
Okay, so the next question is this a recommendation for fixed wired equipment only? What about equipment on 32 amp plugs?
No, well, I'm there to be corrected, but I thought that Commando plugs were, in commercial kitchens, were deemed on the same criteria as 13 amp sockets, and they are protected by RCDs, but I'm happy to be corrected on that. But I would certainly think, yes, they should be. If you're talking about 32 amp Commando sockets, plug and sockets, they most definitely should be protected by RCD, and I can't think why they wouldn't be if 13 amp socket outlets are.
So the next question is quite long. It's regarding design and specification proposal. All new installations should be specified with each individual appliance protected by a suitable RCD or RCBO devices. These should be specific to the particular appliance, not as a general single RCBO on the distribution board. This is expected on new build installations and where the opportunity arises on considerable sized installed but not smaller volume equipment swap outs, where the DB is already protected by a residual current device. This is unnecessary and would carry a commercial risk, I think is what I mean, unless what is meant by a new installation is all new. And that's the end. Yeah,
we're talking about two types there. If it's an all new installation, a completely new kitchen, then I would think, yes, it would be the design consultant or the designer kitchen house to be informing the services provider of the requirements for each individual appliance, as per the manufacturer's instructions or as per the manufacturer's specifications. If you're talking about a one-off replacement, so you're taking out, let's say, I don't know, a dishwasher and you're putting in another dishwasher, and the dishwasher hasn't got an RCD protection, it is our recommendation that you, on the quotation stage and on site survey, you would identify that and you would request that it was upgraded, the electrical supply was upgraded to have that. As I say, it's a guidance, it's not a legal requirement. So it would be, if you were happy to install it without, and the client knew that the risks involved, I guess it's contractually between you and the client.
Okay, thank you. So the next is actually more of a statement rather than a question, at least it seems that to me. But I'll read it out for you. RCD within the appliance raises issues with the 18th edition wiring regs, namely 1, RCD selectivity within the installation, coordinating with other RCDs that might be in circuit. 2, testing of the RCD regarding to permissible disconnection times. And 3, periodic testing of the RCD within the scope of installation condition reports. In summary, relying solely on the integrated RCD within equipment will not guarantee correct operation or ongoing testing. I don't know if the person's expecting it.
I think it is a statement, but I would agree with the statement. I would suggest that one of the things we are in discussions regarding with ECA and to try and upgrade, for want of a better word, the kitchen areas so that it's a requirement. I guess if that's the case, then it would be the responsibility, it would be an annual inspection of the fixed wiring, sorry, that's what I was thinking, as opposed to, I think it's generally, it's 5-year inspection currently of fixed wiring, but on pools and sauna areas, it's specifically fixed wiring has to have an annual inspection, and it would be the electrical contractor, as far as I'm concerned, who would be responsible for testing that. If the RCD is specified for that piece of kit, I don't see it's the responsibility of the engineer who happens to be working on site on it. As long as he's happy that it's there, it wouldn't be his responsibility to go and test that and verify I mean, I know there's a test button that you press, but I think it was more in depth, that statement, than pressing the test button on an RCD.
Thanks, Nick. The next is a question. If we supply an appliance on a like-for-like basis, and on arrival we find the appliance to be replaced does not have RCD, RCBO protection fitted, can we proceed and install the appliance to what is an existing wiring installation and record this on our paperwork and inform the responsible person? Or do we stop the installation until RCD, RCBO has been fitted?
Well, our recommendation suggests that you could certainly install the appliance, but you wouldn't turn the appliance on or commission the appliance until that's fitted. But again, that's a recommendation, and that would really be down to a discussion between the installation company and the customer. At the very least, I would suggest it would need to be documented that it was the recommendation of the installation company that a suitable RCD was fitted. But as I say, these are guidelines, it's not statutory. So it's one of those difficult situations where I think it's down to the relationship you've got with the customer. Certainly, I would suggest you would be using as many persuasive powers as you have.
Great, thanks, Nick. The next question is, our counter supplier has provided a certificate for a live test for a recent installation. The tester has a City and Guilds ticket for testing. The client insists that the tester should be NIC or similar qualified to test the installation. Can anyone clarify this?
This is to test verify the appliance. Not, I'm assuming he's talking about, he's installed the counter and it needs a qualified, for want of a better word, electrician to verify the testing. I don't know that, well, there's certainly no statutory requirement for that. It would come under the Electricity Work Act. And I would guess it would be down to the competency of the engineer that's installing and his depth of knowledge, electrical depth of knowledge.
Okay, thank you. At this point, there aren't any further questions. There are people who have in the meeting who have put their comments in the group, and they put them to everyone so everyone can read them. But there aren't any further questions per se, Nick.
Okay.
So, Jocelyn, did we cover the issue of earth bonding and specification of isolation? There's a question here. Issues of earth bonding and specification of isolation and acceptance by customers who need to refer to a credible authority, perhaps for that direction, rather than to the individual provider. Is there anything can be done to help with this?
Well, that really would come down to the customer and his relationship or his contract with an electrical contracting company. It wouldn't be, as I see it, the appliance installer. It would be the fixed wiring electrical contractor that's responsible for that site. And if he hasn't got one, get one.
Sorry to butt in, just to clarify, maybe simpler, because I can't type quick enough and I can't read, the screen resolution's too small. There was a particular aspect of earth testing and earth loop impedance testing, which I'd suggest, and it may be separate from this particular issue about RCDs, but the industry needs to take note of. So this is perhaps not the forum, but it's something that CESRB might like to have a look at separately. The isolation was a specification issue, so whether it's BIM or auto quotes or specify, appliance providers may have specific requirements for forms of isolation. So this is over and above RCD protection that again need to be incorporated into the specification so that the purchaser is aware from the outset of that requirement. And the secondary aspect of this, which is fundamental, is clear and again, it's something CESRB, if it could publish, promote, and make visible these documents that can then be pointed at and referred to by appliance manufacturers, appliance installers. The point was about the separation or the line of responsibility. And in the industry, as everybody will aware, we've always viewed that we make connections to isolation provided by others. Isolation appropriate and safely isolated by others, and it's just that final meter of connection. It's patently clear that that is not clear to customers and to facilities managers and to ongoing electrical contractors, and that distinction or that line of distinction needs wider dissemination as part of this issue as well. So to what point does the responsibility, and for example, RCDs on the board, clearly that's something that people in our side of the industry would not be fitting or installing. And so it's, when we're recommending that these are installed, this isn't for personal gain or benefit. And it is then subject, as we've experienced already, people agreeing and saying they will install them and then not installing them. As you've indicated, Nick, already, at that point we say, well, I'm sorry, we can't, it's installed, but we can't make live or commission because until it's protected, you do so. So that this very clear definition of where the responsibility starts and ends, and indeed the I call it the handshake between the installer and the fixed wiring provider, so that both systems are actually talking to each other and connected to each other. It would be profoundly useful as a part of this exercise. As I say, CESRB had clarity in a document that could be pointed to by, in situations of dispute.
Yeah. I mean, is there such a document, and is there a path to that you're aware of currently, or are you suggesting that we try and create this path?
No. I'm absolutely requesting, suggesting, pleading that CESRB, whose I confess whose functions and purposes I wasn't aware of before, comes through with this sort of clarity that when we are in discussions, dispute with customers about who said that doesn't, that's not listed in the 18th edition, I've never seen that, etc., 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 which sadly we're getting from people who should know better. There is no one tablet of stone that we could point to, and so it'd be really useful if there was a CESRB document or multiple CESRB documents, one on extent of responsibility, one on RCDs and RCBOs, one on earth loop impedance, etc., but multiple, I can imagine, that you could say this is the way the industry operates safely.
Well, it's very laudable what you're saying, but I think it goes beyond the bounds of CESRB to produce that that extensively. I think what we have done is a good stab at the guidance. I think what you're saying is very laudable, but I think it probably goes beyond, and I will bring this up at the next CESRB meeting to get others' view on how far we can go. I'm more than happy to do that and come back to you and tell you. But at the moment, my initial view is that's probably beyond our powers as CESRB at the moment.
Thank you, Nick. I do have further questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
The next is, what would be the proposal for equipment delivered only, not installed? For example, a plug-in commercial toaster. There's more to the question. As the customer positions, installs, and effectively commissions this, where would the liability rest? The unit may still be serviced by an FM company with their operator at quote-unquote risk.
Well, if it's supply only, I would suggest the appliance will come with installation instructions. And if those installation instructions deem that it has to have an RCBO, then obviously who's ever installing it should be following the installation manufacturer's instructions. They are always king with any piece of equipment, an appliance, and an appliance should be installed as per the manufacturer's installation instructions. So you should be following that, and if they don't follow that, I wouldn't deem it's the manufacturer or the supplier's responsibility if you purely supplied only. In other words, I say dropped it on the curb, but for want of a better word, delivered it to the kitchen door.
Indeed, yeah. Okay, great, thank you. The next is, electricians will not test equipment with incorporated RCDs. They are only concerned with the fixed installation. Can you comment on how the latest code of practice for in-service testing of electrical equipment, 5th edition, may have implications on this and other related service issues?
Well, I think that will be addressed as and when, hopefully, the British standard is modified. In other words, there is a modification to BS 7671. I hope that will be covered and the testing, etc., within that document. But I certainly wouldn't see it as being the appliance engineer's responsibility. I would see it as being part of the fixed wiring of the building and the responsibility of the electrician or electricians. But I mean, obviously they needed guidance on that, and that would come from the 18th edition, provided the modifications are approved and put as an addendum to the 2018 regulations.
And Nick, fair to say we've ordered a copy of the 5th edition and we're waiting delivery of it. That was ordered about 10 days ago now, and we still haven't received it. So we're awaiting that, and then we can do a full evaluation, can't we?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Thank you, Nick. There's no further questions in the chat box, unless anybody has any further ones they'd like to quickly add. Keith, do you have anything that I've missed?
No, let's just give a final opportunity for some questions. If you wouldn't mind typing them in immediately if you have any further questions. To pull this together a little, what we will do is issue the recording of this morning's meeting, and also reissue the statement that Nick drafted as the chair of CESRB on behalf of the industry. We'll also make various documents available on the FEA website and put the links into them. in order that you can use those as a resource as you wish. Just to reiterate what Nick has said, this is guidance to look at improving the situation that may be out there in the industry as far as existing and future installations are concerned. And I think it's for all of the various elements to perhaps look at internal systems and processes and perhaps see where there may be a gap or an opportunity to improve things. Just one comment for any manufacturers on the call. In our discussions with BEMA and their head of standards, he made it very clear that manufacturers' instructions must include details to cover any foreseen installation of the appliance. So it means that it may be worth a run through of your documents just to make sure that you cover all the opportunities and potential needs there, just as a bit of housekeeping, if nothing else. And I think certainly with what Nick has put together, the other elements of what go into the installation, supply, installation and subsequent servicing of equipment, we're looking to cover those gaps. And it was felt that it was very important that as your industry trade associations, we come out with that guidance pending whatever else may be forthcoming. And we see this as just a process, Nick, I think it's fair to say, of establishing best practice in the market where we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Any other questions, Jocelyn?
There's just a comment more than a question. The person says this is guidance, but guidance soon becomes a standard that legislation bears upon. You must be clear on the word must and should where possible. If this is not clear, following on, engineers have their own take on matters and easily condemn or badmouth the install. That's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah, I accept the comment. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no further questions.
Okay. I think we're probably done then. I've got a dry throat now, so I need a glass of water.
Okay, thank you to everybody for joining the call. If you do have any further questions, please let us know at the FEA Secretariat if you're an FEA member. If you're a CEDA member, I see Peter Kay is on the call, please direct them to Peter, or indeed directly to Nick. We'll put the comments out with Nick's email address, and Nick, I know you'll be kind enough to answer any questions that anybody has. So thank you all very much for your time this morning.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.